"Filthy animals like you belong in cages." That was the first thing the crowd heard. And it was the last thing Officer Daniel Martinez ever said as a free man. It happened just after 8:45 a.m. on a quiet Thursday morning at the Dallas County Courthouse. Lawyers were rushing in with coffee, clerks carried stacks of files, and nobody saw the storm coming. Until it was too late. A woman in jeans and a cream-colored blouse was walking up the courthouse steps, holding a leather briefcase full of case notes. She moved with confidence but not arrogance, like someone who knew the weight of justice and carried it every day. Officer Martinez stood at the security checkpoint, bored and half-scrolling through his phone. When he saw her, something in his head clicked. Not curiosity, not professionalism, just judgment. He stepped forward. "Ma'am, hold up. Restricted entrance." The woman stopped. "Excuse me?" "I said stop. Courthouse staff only. You people use the public entrance on the other side." Her tone stayed calm. "I work here." He smirked. "Yeah. Doing what?" "Cleaning." The words hung in the air, sharp, venomous, loud enough for others to hear. Her eyes didn't waver. "I'm telling you, I work here. If you'll just let me explain." The slap cracked through the morning like a gunshot. Her head snapped sideways, her briefcase flew open, and legal papers scattered across the marble steps. Gasps. Phones raised. A guard by the door froze mid-step. Martinez leaned in close, his voice dripping with hate. "Filthy animals like you belong in cages, not courthouses." Then came the cuffs. Cold. Tight. Final. He slammed her against the wall, the echo of metal against stone bouncing through the entryway. People watched, but no one moved. The woman looked up, not at him, but at the bronze plaque above the doors. It read, "The Honorable Judge Kesha Williams presiding." Her name, her courthouse, and she was the one in handcuffs. Inside, the officers dragged her through the metal detectors, laughing. "Guess we got ourselves a real one today," Thompson said, smirking. "Yeah," Martinez replied. She thought she could just walk in like she owns the place. He had no idea how right he was. They sat her on a bench near Holding. Her cheek was swelling fast, but her silence was louder than anything in the room. By 9:30 a.m., Martinez was testifying. Same courtroom. Same lies. Different victim. Judge Harrison, a temporary fill-in, sat at the bench. He adjusted his glasses and nodded to the prosecutor. "Let's begin." "Officer Martinez," Prosecutor Walsh said, "please tell the court what happened." "Yes, ma'am." Martinez's voice was confident, practiced, dripping with authority. "At approximately 8:45 this morning, I observed a suspicious individual attempting to access a restricted area of the courthouse. The subject refused multiple commands to stop, became hostile, and resisted lawful arrest." He pointed toward Kesha, cuffed, bruised, calm. "As you can see, Your Honor, she's still uncooperative." Harrison glanced at her briefly, then back to Martinez. "And what led you to detain her?" "She was carrying what appeared to be stolen court documents. I attempted to verify her ID, but she became aggressive, started yelling, and threatened me." In the back row, two other officers, Rodriguez and Thompson, nodded on cue. They knew the playbook. Same story, different target. "She claimed she worked here," Martinez continued. "Said she was someone important. Happens all the time. These people always make up stories to avoid arrest." A few people in the gallery murmured approval. Others looked uneasy. Walsh nodded. "Officer, would you say you handled this situation professionally?" "Absolutely," Martinez replied smoothly. "Minimum force. I've done this job 15 years. You develop instincts." Kesha's eyes stayed locked on him, steady and cold. Martinez looked away first. "Your Honor," Walsh concluded, "the defendant clearly resisted. We ask that charges of trespassing, disorderly conduct, and assault on a police officer proceed to full hearing." Judge Harrison leaned back. "Agreed. Officer Martinez, thank you for your service. It was supposed to be routine. It was supposed to be another, unsubstantiated complaint. But that's when everything began to shift." Kesha spoke for the first time. "Your Honor." Her voice was calm, too calm. It made people turn. "Permission to address the court," she said. Judge Harrison frowned. "You're not represented, ma'am. You can speak after formal charges." "Respectfully, Your Honor," she interrupted. "I'd like to correct several factual inaccuracies in Officer Martinez's statement." Her tone wasn't angry, it was surgical. Martinez's jaw clenched. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular." "Quiet," Harrison said, curious now. Go on. Kesha turned slightly toward the bench. At 8:45 this morning, I was walking toward the courthouse from the public sidewalk, not a restricted zone. The Supreme Court has already ruled that those areas are open access to all citizens. Whispers spread through the gallery. Her vocabulary wasn't random. It was precise, legal. She pointed to the papers Martinez claimed were stolen. Those are judicial case files, Your Honor. Pending motions and memoranda for today's docket. All legitimate. Harrison narrowed his eyes. And how would you know that? Because I reviewed them last night, she said simply. Martinez shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, Walsh said, standing. The defendant is fabricating. Kesha looked directly at the prosecutor. You might want to sit down. The room froze. Her tone had changed, calm still, but layered with command. She continued. I'd also like to address the body cam issue. Officer Martinez claimed it malfunctioned. That's odd, considering every courthouse camera records continuously, and every officer's body cam auto-uploads to county servers every 60 seconds. Martinez went pale. He'd forgotten. So, Kesha said, I'd like to request that this court preserve surveillance data between 8:45 and 9:15 this morning. Walsh stepped forward. You can't make evidentiary requests, you're not. Your Honor, Kesha cut in. As a pro-SE defendant, I have the constitutional right to present exculpatory evidence. The courtroom went still. Even the stenographer stopped typing. Judge Harrison looked at her carefully. You seem familiar with procedure. Do you have legal training? Her lips curved slightly. Yes, Your Honor. And your name again? Kesha Williams. Something flickered behind his eyes. The clerk in the corner froze. The bailiff, Henderson, turned his head slowly. He'd heard that name before. Every morning, in fact. It was engraved on the courtroom plaque. Kesha's handcuffs clicked open. Henderson didn't even ask permission. She reached into her jacket pocket and placed a small leather wallet on the table. The gold emblem gleamed under the light. It wasn't a driver's license. It was a judicial ID. My credentials, she said. Federal Judge Kesha Williams, presiding. The silence that followed was like gravity. Heavy. Immovable. Judge Harrison went white. Prosecutor Walsh's pen dropped from her hand. Martinez stared, unblinking. Your Honor, Kesha said calmly, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Her tone was light, but her eyes were steel. 15 minutes later, the courtroom door opened again. All rise, the bailiff's voice thundered. Everyone stood, including the man who had called her an animal. The woman they had handcuffed walked in wearing full judicial robes, the gold trim glinting beneath the lights. In her right hand, she carried her ceremonial gavel. The same courtroom where she'd been called a criminal was now hers again. Court is now in session, Henderson announced. The Honorable Judge Kesha Williams presiding. Martinez's knees almost gave out. She took her seat behind the bench, and let the silence settle. Officer Martinez, she said evenly. You may remain standing. He looked sick. Do you recall your testimony this morning? Aye. Good, she cut in. Because we're going to review it together. She reached under the bench and pulled out a tablet. Let's begin with Exhibit 1, Courthouse Camera 7. The video filled the monitors. Kesha walking toward the entrance. Martinez blocking her path. The slap. The shove. The cuffs. The sound came next. His voice filled the room. Filthy animals like you belong in cages. The gallery gasped. Someone whispered, Oh my God. Kesha didn't flinch. She paused the video at the moment of impact. Officer Martinez, she said softly. Do you see any aggression from me in this footage? He stayed silent. No, she said. Let's move on. She switched to the next file. Martinez's body cam backup, auto-synced to cloud storage. The sound was even worse. Look at this uppity woman, thinking she can walk into my courthouse, his recorded voice sneered. These people need to learn their place. Kesha set the tablet down slowly. Officer Martinez, she said, you told this court that actions have consequences. I couldn't agree more. The courtroom held its breath. She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping low, calm, dangerous. You assaulted a federal judge. You lied under oath. You corrupted this court. And you did all of it while being recorded from 3 different angles. Martinez opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Kesha raised her gavel, resting it gently on the bench. You've spent your career making people feel powerless, she said. Today, power answers back. The gavel came down once. The sound hit like thunder. The sound of the gavel still hung in the air when the room erupted into whispers. Some couldn't believe what they'd just seen. Others couldn't even look at her. Not because she was wrong, but because she was right. Judge Kesha Williams sat back in her chair and let the silence work for her. Every courtroom had its own rhythm. She had spent 23 years mastering it. The slow breaths between truth and confession, the long pauses that made liars crack. She leaned forward, elbows on the bench. "Officer Martinez," she said softly, "I'd like you to look at me." He couldn't. His eyes stayed fixed on the floor. "Up," she repeated. "This is a court of law. You'll look at the person you assaulted." His chin lifted slightly, just enough for their eyes to meet. He looked small now, stripped of authority, stripped of certainty. "Do you remember what you said this morning?" she asked. "I." His throat was dry. "Your Honor, I." She cut him off. "You said, these people always claim to be lawyers, judges, senators. Anything to avoid accountability. You said I belonged in a cage. You said I was playing the victim card. You said you were teaching me a lesson." Each sentence landed like a strike. She stood from the bench, still holding her gavel. "Well, Officer Martinez, class is over. Now you're the lesson." She turned to the bailiff. "Bring up the footage from courthouse camera 8. The monitors lit up again. A different angle. Another view of the assault. This one captured the laughter of Rodriguez and Thompson in the background. Judge Williams let it play. She didn't narrate. She didn't need to. The images said enough. The slap. The choke. The insult. Then the laughter. When the video ended, she looked straight at the two officers. "Officer Rodriguez. Officer Thompson. Would you like to revise your sworn statements?" Neither answered. "Silence noted," she said. "Your recorded laughter will be added to the evidence as proof of complicity and obstruction." Walsh, the prosecutor, was already packing her files. "Your Honor, the state withdraws from this case pending further review." Kesha raised an eyebrow. "Further review? Counselor, you just prosecuted a federal judge for attempting to enter her own courtroom. I'd recommend you start reviewing your career." The gallery stirred. Even the clerk's jaw dropped. "Officer Martinez," she continued, "please remain standing." He tried to steady himself, but his legs trembled. "You said earlier that you acted in the interest of public safety. Tell me, whose safety did you protect when you called me an animal? Whose safety did you protect when you lied under oath?" He didn't answer. "That's what I thought," she said. By the time court recessed, the building was buzzing. News had already spread through the hallways, then to nearby offices, then across the city. A police officer had assaulted a sitting judge. On camera. In broad daylight. And now, that judge was presiding over his hearing. Reporters began gathering outside. Phones streamed live. Hashtags trended. Hashtag Judge Williams, hashtag Justice Hits Back, hashtag No One Above the Law. Inside, Kesha stood quietly in the hallway as the bailiff approached. "Your Honor," Henderson said, "the chief judge is on the line." She nodded and took the call. "Kesha," came the voice of Chief Judge Margaret Carter. "We're pulling every file this man has touched in the past 5 years. Internal Affairs is on standby. The FBI wants to talk." "Good," Kesha said. Her tone was steady, but her eyes were tired. "Tell them to move fast. Every minute he's out there, someone else's life is hanging on his lies." Carter paused. "And you? You holding up?" Kesha looked down at her bruised wrist. "I've fine. Just doing my job." But even as she said it, she knew this wasn't just her fight anymore. When court reconvened, the gallery was packed to capacity. Every clerk, lawyer, and reporter who could find a seat was there. This time, Martinez wasn't in uniform. He wore a plain orange jumpsuit, the same kind his victims had worn when they stood before him. His hands were cuffed, his badge stripped away. For the first time in his career, the system he hid behind was looking at him, not through him. Judge Williams entered the courtroom to a standing silence. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just did what she had always done, uphold the law. She opened a folder. "Officer Daniel Martinez," she said, her tone level. "Before we proceed to sentencing, the court will review your service record." The file was thick. Too thick. 47 misconduct complaints. All closed as unsubstantiated. 43 of those involved people of color. 28 cases dismissed for constitutional violations. $2.3 million in settlements paid by this county because of your conduct. She looked up. "That's not law enforcement, officer. That's legalized terror. A murmur swept through the room. Kesha flipped the page. According to your personnel file, you've undergone sensitivity training 6 times. You passed every course. So let's be clear. This isn't ignorance. It's choice. Her tone hardened. For 15 years, you thought that badge was a shield. You thought power was protection. You thought no one would ever hold you accountable. But you forgot something. She lifted her gavel. The law doesn't belong to the powerful. It belongs to everyone. Officer Martinez, she said, you are hereby charged with assault in the 1st degree, assault on a judicial officer, deprivation of civil rights under color of law, and perjury. She leaned forward. You are guilty on all counts. The gavel came down once, echoing through the chamber like a gunshot. Martinez broke. His body shook, his shoulders collapsing inward. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't know. I swear I didn't. Stop, Kesha said. Her voice didn't rise, but it cut through the air. You knew exactly what you were doing. You just didn't know who you were doing it to. He covered his face, sobbing. She continued. You'll serve 25 years in federal prison without parole. And every case you've ever touched will be reopened and re-examined. Every one of your victims will have their day in court. The courtroom was silent except for his sobs. Then she added, justice delayed is justice denied, but justice delivered is justice for all. The fallout was historic. 12 officers fired. 4 charged. The entire department placed under federal oversight. The investigation spread beyond Martinez, revealing corruption that reached deep into the chain of command. The city paid over $8 million in restitution to wrongfully convicted victims. And the courthouse? It was renamed the Justice Williams Federal Courthouse. Outside the building, a bronze plaque was placed beside the entrance. Here, justice found its voice. Kesha never asked for fame, but she couldn't avoid it. Law schools called. Civil rights groups invited her to speak. The story went viral, shared millions of times online under a single caption. She was the judge they handcuffed until she handed down justice. In a federal prison 2 states away, Daniel Martinez sat alone in his cell. The same words he once spat in hate now looped in his mind like a curse. Animals like you belong in cages. Now he was the one behind the bars. No valle. No rank. No one to call sir. When he looked at his reflection in the scratched metal mirror, he didn't see an officer anymore. He saw what everyone else had seen all along, a man who mistook fear for respect. Some nights, when the cell block was quiet, he thought about the courthouse, the bright lights, the cameras, the gavel hitting the wood. That sound still made him flinch. He had called it a job. She had called it justice. And justice had won. Months later, Kesha stood outside the same courthouse where everything had happened. The morning light hit the bronze plaque, and she smiled faintly. Reporters still followed her, but she waved them off. She wasn't interested in headlines anymore. She was interested in reform. Inside, a new set of officers were being sworn in under new rules. Stricter accountability, mandatory cameras, independent oversight. For the first time in years, people believed change was possible. As she prepared to leave, a young woman approached, a former law clerk from that morning. Judge Williams, she said. I just wanted to thank you. Watching you that day. It changed my life. I joined the ACLU. Kesha smiled. Good. The fight needs people like you. The clerk hesitated. Can I ask you something? That moment, when he hit you, how did you stay calm? Kesha looked toward the courthouse doors, where her name still gleamed on the plaque. Because I knew something he didn't, she said softly. The truth always wins. It just needs someone brave enough to speak it. She turned to walk down the steps, the same ones where she'd been humiliated months earlier. But now each step felt lighter, because justice wasn't just an idea anymore. It was real. It had a face, and it had spoken. The camera panned up, the plaque glinting in the sunlight. Never underestimate the power of truth, because sometimes justice doesn't wear a blindfold. Sometimes justice wears a robe.